and welcome. This is Brian Kibler with StarCityGames.com with another in my constructed video series, and it feels weird to be doing a standard video when we've already just seen previews begin for the next set. But standard is still kind of in upheaval. We just saw a totally new deck take both first and second place at the Grand Prix in Miami, the green-white Devotion deck. And that's one thing that actually I think has been really exciting about sort of recent standard formats, is that we've seen a lot of change and a lot of upheaval all through the entirety of the format. They've been really, really good formats, I think. We've obviously seen some decks that have held onto prominence like Abzan, but even those decks have taken various forms. You've seen everything from Abzan aggro to mid-range to control. And now with the green-white sort of manifest deck winning at the Grand Prix of Miami, first and second place, pretty crazy. The format sort of turned on its head once again, and I wanted to sort of take things back a bit and try out a deck that I think is in a position maybe right now to be fairly strong, but I definitely think has some exciting potential new tools coming in Dragons of Tarkir. So, sort of see where this general structure is situated right now and how it plays, to sort of, give me a better sense for, what the sort of things that I want to be looking at come the next set. And, that's green-red aggro. Not surprisingly, this is a deck that I am interested in playing. Sort of, exactly my style of deck. Mana creatures into sort of mid-range dudes, but aggressive mid-range dudes, not, like the green-white Devotion decks. I saw a lot of people who are saying on Twitter and such, like, oh, it's exactly your kind of deck in the finals. And I'm like, these are games that take, hours to win and involve players at hundreds of life points. This is not the kind of Magic that I look to play. But this is, Elvish Mystic into creature to kill you. That's exactly how I want to play things. So the thought behind this particular deck is that I think that flying is very good right now. If you look at the green-red, the green-white Devotion decks, they're all very strong at dealing with creatures in the ground, but they don't really have many ways to actually interact with opposing creatures. And while obviously the Mastery of the Unseen, the triggered ability when you flip cards face up with Mastery of the Unseen, you gain a lot of life potentially. But if you're able to be sort of aggressive early on and take big chunks of your opponent's life total in the air, I think that seems like a reasonable place to be in the matchup. And also, like green-white decks historically don't have great ways to deal with opposing planeswalkers and such. Sarkhan I think is reasonable in the matchup, not amazing. Xena Ghost I actually think is great. It's one of the things that's in my sideboard here for. But like I feel like this deck may have the sort of tools to put enough pressure on the green-white Devotion deck with creatures that they're not particularly well set up to deal with, that it might be a reasonable option against them. I haven't actually played the matchup, so you are seeing my sort of testing and experimentation here. But sort of the core here, is the pretty much quality flyers at every mana cost. We have Flamewake Phoenix into Ashcloud Phoenix into Stormbirth Dragon. Obviously with the new set, there's I believe Thunderblake Regent is a pretty exciting card that could potentially take the place of the Ashcloud Phoenix here. Little sturdier, doesn't have the sort of return to play ability, but does have the ability to deal some damage to your opponent's face if they do have anything that might be able to remove it. Flamewake Phoenix is an interesting one because it can put consistent pressure on your opponent starting early in the game. I like Boon Satyr in particular with Flamewake Phoenix because it can allow your sort of cheap creatures to get in big chunks of damage fairly early in the game. Boon Satyr sort of doubles as a cheap, like high power threat that also turns on Ferocious for your Heir of the Wilds and Critter's Claws, while also kind of being a pseudo flyer in your deck that has so many flyers. Goblin Rabblemaster is a card that I've sort of been back and forth on when I've been playing it in Standard. Rabblemaster is a card that can be extremely powerful if your opponent isn't able to deal with it immediately. But if you are on the back foot, Rabblemaster is a terrible, terrible card. I think that it's sufficiently powerful that it's worth playing, even though it is high variance. When it's good, it's so good, and when it's bad, it's still really bad. But I think that the power level when Rabblemaster is online on time is high enough to justify playing it when sometimes it's a little bit worse. Shaman of the Great Hunt is a card that I'm sort of trying out here for two reasons. One, I think that the Obviously against decks where Shaman itself can connect, it's very powerful. But even if the ground is kind of locked up, being able to get the +1/+1 counters on your flying creatures can be pretty powerful. And in a matchup like against, say, Green-White Devotion, where the board may get a little bit mucked up, having the Ferocious ability on Shaman the Great Hunt allows you to sort of refill and dig for things like perhaps a lethal Crater's Claws or a big flyer to break through. Seems like it could be pretty high value. So we're trying that out here. Only a couple of copies because I do think that it's important that most of your creature base is evasive. The ability of the green-white decks and other sort of devotion decks in the format to sort of muck up the ground, whether it's with Whisperwood Elemental or with other manifests from Mastery, things like that, means that something like Shaman, the chances of Shaman actually connecting on the ground doesn't seem particularly high, sort of in the middle terms of the game, which is why sort of have the Air Force here to try and finish things off. So sideboard wise, like I said, I think that Xena Ghost is potentially really powerful against the green-white devotion decks. I could be totally off on that, but in my experience, sort of mid-range creature decks that don't have great ways to break through, having something like Xena Ghost, you can just generate a pretty big advantage pretty quickly, and be able to use its ability to make some guys and then make a huge turn worth of mana. You can potentially play like Storm Breath and another big thing in the same turn. You can get really far ahead with it. Similarly, I think Destructive Revelry feels like it's probably pretty good in that matchup. The ability to kill both Courser and Master of the Unseen seem like they seem like the sort of things that they rely upon in order to be able to sort of take over the game and not die to your evasive threats. One of the things I also like, one of the key cards in a lot of the sideboards of these devotion decks against aggressive decks looks like it's Hornet Nest. And Hornet Nest is a card that was absolutely devastating for a lot of the teamer decks that I was playing, that were relied on getting in hits with things like Savage Knuckleblade or Pelukrinos on the ground. If your opponent actually played a Hornet's Nest, it could totally shut you down. But with so many flying creatures here, Hornet's Nest is actually not a big problem, and I definitely like that that sort of element of this particular take on this deck. But Revelry, being able to take out those enchantments, definitely has a lot of value. I think the damage is better than the body that you might get from something like Reclamation Sage. I've actually even considered some things like the Ogre dude, or the Cyclops dude, Polis Crusher. But I think that getting Polis Crusher through your opponent's creatures in the ground is probably too difficult. In Revelry, being cheaper seems like a stronger place to be. And then some tools against aggressive decks: Arc Lightning, Wild Slash. I feel like this deck, compared to something like sort of more traditional green-red monster deck or green-red devotion deck, is a little bit more vulnerable to aggressive strategies because most of your creatures are a little bit smaller because they are flying and evasive, and you need more tools like cheap removal to be able to sort of try and keep the opposing threats under control while you get to that mid game. So anyway, that's really what's going on here. That's what I'm trying. Lots of possible things to experiment with, but this is at least where I'm going to start. So let's go jump into some games and see how we do.